Mrs. Buchtova for introducing me, and thank you Slovak American Society of Washington for inviting me, and especially Mrs. Helen Fedor. We have been communicating and in touch since March, right, planning this wonderful event, so I'm really excited and happy and thankful for this invitation, because it also gives me more space to advertise for our program. As Stanka said, it's the only program in the whole United States, and actually not only, in the US, Canada, and the whole Western Hemisphere, where someone can study Slovak language and culture and receive a minor. So it's really important program, and I'll do my best and encourage others to help me, to join me, to preserve this program and help it grow. I'm also very happy that I'm here today. Do you know what day is today?
Sobota.
Huh?
Sobota.
Of course, Saturday, thank you. But the date, October 28th.
28.
Yeah, and then, because 105th years ago, it's 105th anniversary of this big event. What happened 105 years ago?
The beginning of Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, the Czechoslovakia, first Czechoslovak Republic was established, and it was a very exciting and important date in our history. For the first time, Slovaks and Czechs joined. We should be more specific. There was like the territory of Bohemia, Moravia, Czech part of Silesia, or Czech language or dialect speaking Silesia, Slovakia, and Carpathia-Ruthenia. It was larger actually, the country at the beginning, and for the first time those people living in that territory expressed their will to create their own country, elect their own representatives and be independent. So it's a wonderful moment for me to be here to share and speak to you about the Slovak language, culture in this occasion. Yeah, I represent here the University of Pittsburgh, which is also a great thing to do. And I would like to go back a couple months before the Czechoslovakia was created, because this document actually was the important one where they expressed, the representatives of Czechs and Slovaks in the United States expressed their will to create a new country. And it was a Pittsburgh Agreement, signed on 31st May 1980 in Pittsburgh, downtown Pittsburgh. And you can see among the representatives there is a Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk. And back then, Pittsburgh was a, can you hear me? This way is better. Pittsburgh was the biggest Slovak city in the world, actually. Not only, in the US, it was bigger than any other city in Slovakia or Hungary. So Pittsburgh was an important city, and that's why we have also the electorate and the program in this one. And today, and this year actually, it's another important anniversary, which Helen and you also mentioned previously, right? This is the year when we commemorate or 30th anniversary of the Velvet Divorce, when Czechoslovakia split, and since 30 years we have been talking about independent Slovak Republic. And this picture is from September, a month ago, when two presidents of Czech president and Slovak president Madame Zuzana Čaputová met in New York, and they celebrated this this moment. And I know that you organize also these lectures this year to commemorating this 30th year anniversary. All right, so this is what on the top, it's what I promised to talk today, just to remind myself. But before I'll go there, I have here the slide again about the only Slovak studies program in the US and Canada, and I would like to tell you a little more about that, because as you can see, Slovakia is a pretty small country when we compare it to Pennsylvania. It's like half of the size of Pennsylvania. So it's not easy to advertise and promote the program at the university. But so far I have been successful. On the left top corner you have students studying the Slovak language and culture, and all of them are dedicated and they would like to pursue a minor in Slovak language. And because we didn't have anyone to get minor since 2018, am I correct? Because here is Jonathan Štefanik, our last student who received a minor in Slovak language and culture, so I'm glad, Jonathan, you made it here today. To receive a minor in Slovak language, you don't only have to, the students have to become fluent in the Slovak language, at least advanced low level. They also need to take classes, so-called cultural classes. And last semester I offered a class called Slovak, Czech and Central European Cinema. And it was a very successful one because Slovakia and Czechia, we have wonderful movies, and I'm sure some of them you have been able to watch even here at the embassy. So I encourage you to look for them. That course was really successful one, and now I am offering the course called Eastern European Immigration to Pittsburgh. And since we only now moved to Pittsburgh, you can imagine how challenging to teach is that course for me. I have students from the Pittsburgh area, but I think I'm doing pretty well. On the right upper top corner you see students who are taking that course. And we went to Heinz History Museum in Pittsburgh. We are going to Andy Warhol Museum. Actually, Donald Warhol, Andy's nephew, is coming next Sunday, and he'll give a talk about Eastern European influences in Andy Warhol's art. And it will be during the occasion of our Slovak Heritage Festival. So if you are there, it will be a big event. But what I'm talking about this course is that students who are taking Slovak or any other Slavic language and culture usually have this background. They have ancestors from territory of Central, Eastern, Southern Slavic Europe, and they are second, not really third, fourth generation. And we started a project called Oral History Museum. I'm sure you already have heard about different oral history museums, but this one is started by the University of Pittsburgh, by our Slavic department. And I encourage students to go and interview community members and record a video where they will share their memories, because we would like to preserve them. We don't want to lose them. And as Global Slovakia, for example, right now published a book. That's wonderful, because there are the memories and stories of people who came here. So the similar thing we are trying to do at Pitt as well, encouraging students to do research, record and preserve. So I wanted to mention that as well. All right. Also, if you are interested in studying Slovak and you are not a Pitt student, you can still apply and attend our Summer Language Institute. That's open to everyone. Scholarships are actually available for everyone. And we offer 6 weeks program in Pittsburgh or online, and additional 4 weeks in Slovakia. And this year was the first time. I was trying for 4 years to bring students there, but unfortunately because of pandemic and later the war in Ukraine, it was always cancelled by Pitt. And last summer, finally, we were able to get there, 6 students. And you see different ages, not only university students. We spent together 4 weeks in Slovakia. In the morning they attended classes at the University of Kamenárová, Studia Akademika Slovakia classes, and then in the afternoon we visited different places and monuments in Slovakia, and we even traveled around. Visited Žilina, Orava Castle, Byča, then Bojnice, Trenčín, High Tatras, etc. So that's another possibility. We want to, learn some Slovak, visit the country. You can also travel there through our program at Pitt. Good. So here's a little bit more about me. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but just share that how important it is to study abroad, how it impacted my life, and I will encourage students from Slovakia to travel, to spend some time at study abroad programs, because I was lucky enough to study at the Mercury University in Lublin, Poland, then in Leipzig, University in Germany, and in Regensburg, Bavaria, Germany as well. And it was mostly during my master's, graduate studies, and PhD studies, and I was focusing on West Slavic languages, so I speak Polish, Czech, but also Sorbian, not Serbian, but Sorbian. Sorbs are Slavs living in Germany, and in Leipzig there is the only institute in the world where you can study Upper and Lower Sorbian language. Later, I was assistant professor at Kamenárová University, and I collaborated with Studia Akademika Slovakia program, and this is the picture me teaching at SAS, their summer language program. I spent there 15 years every summer teaching students from all around the world. And Slovak Minister of Education supports many universities, mostly in Europe, as you can see, where they every year send a professional professor who teaches Slovak language and culture. We have here around 20 places, and one in Peking, Beijing in China. I was a lecturer at the University of Bologna in Italy for 4 years. 15 years ago, almost 16 years ago, we published through SAS the first textbook Krížom krážom, and since then there have been 3 more textbooks, the teacher's manual, exercise book, and more. And this series has been pretty successful since then. There are more than 100,000 publication pieces around the world distributed, supported by the Ministry of Education. And I will share with you today some slides from that book, because it will help me to talk about the secrets of the Slovak language. So we use this series for program at Pitt. It's the A1, the blue, and A2 green textbook, and the kind of half of the orange one. So that's if you manage to learn and study 2.5 textbooks, then you can receive a minor in Slovak, because that offers everything what you need. If you study, work hard, you can get to the advanced low or intermediate high level and proficiency. All right, we also have eSlovak SK online program. It's for free, so if you're interested in learning on your own, you can enroll, and basically the Krížom krážom textbooks are there available. So, and what's also helpful, there are grammar explained in English, a lot of supportive material you don't find in the textbook. Okay, so why is this textbook so successful? And Andrika can prove that, right? It's because it's super colorful, and it helps actually. And there is a story behind, and because there are 4 friends, in each chapter is about their situation, very realistic one. Anyone can, it can happen to any one of us. They are celebrating birthdays, they go to restaurant, they play board games, they are at Christmas together, they go to doctors, they travel around Slovakia, they go on a date, they enjoy free time, they visit Nitra and Liptov's Kamara on the pictures below. Then someone, the Zuzana, graduates, then she finds a job. Then they go for vacation, celebrate Halloween and other holidays in Slovakia. Then someone buys an apartment, they all move in, they talk about elections, they propose, they marry, there is a happy ending, and then, but through this, like having it engaging, making it fun, to learn, we are able to encourage students. They are curious, they want to learn. There is a lot of pictures. You need to make the grammar. And Slovak, it's a challenging language, and we'll be talking about it today. But you have to encourage your students, right? It has to be fun to learn. And have also realistic, not only expectations, but also realistic topics. So the communication and communicative approach, it's the most important for us to, if you are learning something, you can really use it. If you end up in Slovakia, you can survive and you can express yourself and people can understand you. Okay, so I promised you I'll be talking about if Slovak is the most difficult language. There's what you can hear a lot, especially from Are here any Slovaks? Stanka and I, someone else, like Peťa, right? No one else. So if you live in Slovakia, you'll hear this a lot, like it's the hardest language ever. Am I right? People really believe that. And that's why, and even it's the hardest of the Slavic languages often, they think. So I decided to talk about it a little bit more. So here's the map of the Indo-European languages. Did you hear about that? There are, all the languages around the world are divided into many, actually, language families. And this is the one of the largest, called Indo-European family. And here you can see the languages, they have something in common years ago. So, in a blue, there are Romance languages, right, like Spanish, Italian, and then in red it's German, English, and Scandinavian languages. Is it me? Okay. Then there are Slavic languages in green, and even Albanian or Greek language, and Indo-Iranian languages. Why I'm talking about this, it's important because if you say that's the hardest language, you first have to see who is saying that, right? So always you need to know, or I need to know, or you need to reflect, what's your first language? Or even second and third, the language you really speak, you are fluent, you understand the grammar, you can express yourself. So then you can think about what's the difficult and what not. Because if you speak a language from this Indo-European languages, then learning a language that's not part of that group, like here, this is the example, the Ugro-Finska, so Ugro-Finnic we probably say, or Finno-Ugric language group and family, whereas from Europe, Hungarian, Estonian, and Finnish, right, thank you, are three languages that are very different. The grammatical system is very different. So if we say, okay, starting from Slovak, learning Hungarian, it's more challenging that as a Slovak I'll learn Spanish, or if I even will learn Albanian, right? So because these languages belong to the same group. So if the situation is different in someone from Spain is learning Italian, or it's easier if they are trying to learn Slovak. And if we are learning Slavic languages, for me it's much easier than for you if you don't speak any Slavic language, right? So we can't really say, we already know, that's the most difficult. We can't really say what language is the most difficult. We can only say from the perspective of speakers of Indo-European languages, that language might be the most difficult or one of the most challenging ones to learn. So here I have a map of Slavic languages. There are some things that might not be super correct, but I think especially the area of West Slavic languages, I like how the area is there. How it looks there, because we have their Czech language, Slovak language, Polish language, but there are also Upper and Lower Sorbian languages with the green stripes, right? And even then mentioned the Polabian. It's an extinct West Slavic language, so West Slavs used to live in that northeastern part of Germany till Baltic Sea. So that was the whole bigger Slavic area. And the Sorbs still live in a southern part near the border with Czech Republic and Poland. And there are only around like 20,000 people speaking that language, or those languages. So, and are very fascinating. I might mention something about them later. Then there is, in Poland, you can see there's language called Kashubian, Kashubčina. Someone would say it's dialect, someone that it's the language, but it's definitely a very specific one. And we also have the stripes of red for Rusin language, which is belonging to East Slavic language group, and the stripes should be going to Eastern Slovakia, because you probably know that Rusins are in Slovakia and Eastern Poland, Southeastern Poland as well. So there are some mistakes on this map, but I still kind of like it. All right. So when I want to talk to you about language, we still have to go over this kind of understand there are different levels, right, of or fields we are focusing in the language, and that's phonetics and phonology. I'll be talking today, give you some examples from there, which is the study of production of sound, right? So how we pronounce, and very near to that is also orthography, how we write those sounds, what letter we use for those sounds. And then there is also important for us today morphology, which is study of word structure. So I would focus on these two fields and give you a couple of examples. Hopefully you will find them interesting the same way as I do. So, and always the slides are from our textbook, Krížom krážom. So this is how we introduce the vowels in Slovak, and what I always say, super simple. Super simple, and you know why? Because it's really A, E, I, O, U. And then longer, A, E, I, O, U. And that's it. That's it. That just never changes. There's none assimilation. That's just how you always, if you see A, it's A. It's not A. Or if you see it's E. E, I is just E, not I, right? So in English it can be confusing, and you agree with me, learning the English language is challenging. I'm sure I'm not even pronouncing all the vowels correctly here. In Slovak, this is the easy part. So 5 vowels, and the pronunciation never changes. Then we have consonants. And when I introduce the consonants in Slovak language, I say it's easy too. Isn't it? Look, there's like English alphabet, Latin alphabet, and the pronunciation is pretty similar to English. B, D, F, G, H, K, L, M, N, etc. It's pretty similar. Sometimes it can change due to assimilation, but there are pretty clear rules. You know, it's not like very confusing. There are of course some changes, something you need to study a little bit to understand. But basically, at this step, there are only two consonants that are pronounced differently. And it's the C, which in Slovak is C, and then J, which is Y, right? But it's, most of the times, C is C, and Y is Y. And here's another good example. If you have in English Pacific Ocean, I love this one, Pacific Ocean, there you have three C's, and each is pronounced differently, right? Pacific Ocean. Poor foreigners, I feel so sorry for myself. In Slovak, we say Tichý oceán, but if we would use Pacific, it would be Pacifický oceán. Can you hear it? C, C, C. We are consistent. If there is C, then it's Pacifický oceán, right? So, but then there are some missing spots, right, in the alphabet, and that was actually the history a tricky part, right, for Slavic languages, because we have more sounds than the Latin alphabet offers. We have ch, we have j, we have ch. Oh, it's getting interesting, right? Interesting. Ñ, l, ž. So that was the always big topic to decide how we will, what letters we'll use for this consonant. So there are actually three ways. Can you tell me any, like, of these three ways, ways how we can solve this? If I have a sound like, right, ch or j, and here in the Latin alphabet we don't have a letter for it, so what we can do? There are three possible ways how to solve this, yes?
Put a little accent.
Yeah, put the accent, which is not really an accent. That's one thing. That's the third option I will be talking about. But there are two others. So what else we can do?
Combine some consonants.
Wonderful. Combine some consonants like we have in English, right? Digraphs, right? Digraphemi, digraphs, like CH, which is for ch, right? Or SH for sh. So this was actually, for a long time, what we used, or it was more used in Latin books or documents in Hungarian when they tried to write Slavic words, most of the time Slovak names or something, related to people, and they had to write it down. So then, in the past, that was pretty common to use digraphs, yes. And third option?
IPA.
Huh?
IPA.
What is it, IPA?
International Phonetic.
Yeah, but like years ago. Now we are talking actually about the solution from 9th century. Yeah?
Totally different character.
Perfect. Totally different character. And if we look here, here they are. Cyril and Method, or Constantine and Method, famous brothers from Solun who brought the Christianity, the Grande Moravia, in 863. And I find this very fascinating. We know a lot, as we discussed with my friends over there, we know a lot about this era, maybe even more than what happened 100 or 200 years in Slovakia or in Hungary. But I still find it fascinating as a linguist, because those two brothers were just challenged. Imagine if someone would come and tell you, okay, at home you speak some kind of Slavic language, then go far away, you have never been there, there's no internet, there's not even a car to bring you there, right? Go there and speak to those people about God. And Cyril was Constantine, philosopher. He was a university professor, he was a linguist. And he was Greek, from Byzantium. And he just invented a new alphabet. I think it's fascinating. So he used Latin letters or from other alphabets, the Greek, and he just combined and created completely new letters. He used also symbols, cross or circle, and this is what he put together. On the upper line, it's called hlaholika or glagolitic, and there are all the sounds, the Slavic phonetics or Slavic sounds needed. The letters we needed to write down the sounds. So here you have, for example, the Z, and then it's J. It's a completely new letter, right? This is Z, this is J. Or in glagolitic, this was C, and this is Ch. It's not really, just a modification. It's a completely new letter, right? Or this is S, Sh, or Sh. So this was the first solution we got, like completely new alphabet combination, new combinations, and this is what he put together as glagolitic. They were able to translate another fascinating thing, right? Almost the whole Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and all Church Slavonic, right? So this is the language. When we talk about Cyril and Methodius and later, we talk about Old Church Slavonic. Before, it's Proto-Slavic, two different things, right? Proto-Slavic is the language we know existed, and all the Slavic languages developed from that, but we don't have any document from Proto-Slavic. There were no documents, no, any scripture we can, go back and look into. And here, even for the era of Cyril and Methodius, we don't have original documents, what they translated, but we know they went to Venice and to Rome, and they got this language approved by Pope for a couple of years. So they managed to get the Old Church Slavonic to be official language of the church. Not only Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, Church Slavonic for a couple of years only. When they passed away, it was also, of course, cancelled, but it was a big achievement, and their students didn't stay. They had to run from the Grand Moravia, and they went to Kiev and Rus, to Ukraine, and to Bulgaria and other places, and then continued their mission, and they modified a little bit the alphabet. You see it here, how over the years it's modified, and it's called Cyrillic. That's what the Eastern Slavs use till now. There are some differences between those alphabets, but Eastern and partially Southern Slavs still use this letters. That's the alphabet there. So the sound each sound has a specific letter. There are pictures of two codexes. I was worried this might happen. Good. Yeah, it's here. Codex Zografiensis and Marianus. So this is how actually the glagolitic script would look like. But if you look at what Cyril and Methodius are holding, the document, there's actually Cyrillic. So in their document, on the picture is Cyrillic, but it's not the original alphabet that Cyril invented, right? So the original alphabet is here, even though these two documents or codex are from later. It's end of the 10th century and beginning of 11th century. Good. Then we said digraphs, and then we said to modify the existing letter. And this is actually this guy. Do you know? Jan Hus, right. Jan Hus was also a professor, and he was priest of the Catholic Church in the 15th century. And he was also a very smart person, a linguist, and he published a book, Orthographia Bohemica, in 1406. And he was the one who figured this out. Like, he was, okay, we have this Latin alphabet and we need to modify it somehow so we can get the letters as easy as possible. So he was the one, and the first one who suggested to put a dot, not a hachik, but still the dot, over the consonant to make it palatized for the softer sound, and then lengthening mark for a vowel, right, to make the pronunciation longer. Unfortunately, for his ideas or for how he criticized the Catholic Church, he was burned in Kostnica in 1415 in July, and he wasn't as lucky as Cyril and Methodius. Unfortunately, his ideas were not appreciated, but were very similar to Martin Luther's, who came 100 years after him, 1514, and he started the Reformation. So who's this kind of like predecessor of Martin Luther in Europe and in Bohemia? So here is the Slovak alphabet with the sounds we didn't see before. So what we use there again is this softening mark about the consonant, and it means the pronunciation is palatized. Like for T here, right, it's chai, or ďakovať, or juice. This is how you write juice in Slovak. Or what we have here, lat, cognac, good example for a textbook, right? I didn't catch that one. Okay, then šunka, or výťah, žena, etc. So, you said it's accents. It's not completely true. We call them diacritical marks, softening or lengthening mark, because accent in Slovak is always on the first syllable, right? When we speak like this. Is pretty melodic because it always goes to first syllable or the preposition, but then you pronounce preposition together with the word. And now let's answer the question if this is the most challenging system alphabet for West Slavic languages. What do you think? Do you know Polish a little bit, or Czech, Serbian? So let me show you. This is the Slovak one, and this is the Polish one. So in Polish it's actually a little bit more challenging because Polish has just simply more consonants and more sounds there. For what we have like s and sh, Polish language has sh and sh, right? So it's softer and kind of harder, but I shouldn't, it's more about the pronunciation, whereas the position of your tongue in the mouth. I'm just trying to make it easier here. So there's, different meaning if you change the pronunciation, like kasa, kasha, and kasha. 3 different words. Kasa, it's a cashier, the register, then kasha, it's a name, katka, and kasha, it's a porridge. So 3 different things, but in Polish, it's the consonant system is just larger. So there's also chi and she and sh, and even the rules for orthography are just more challenging than for Slovak. So when we talk about the phonetics, the Slovak is not the most difficult one. It's actually pretty easy, and all my students say they like how phonetic it is. There are some rules, of course, some things you have to overcome or study, but generally it's pretty easy. This part of learning and studying Slovak is pretty easy, and here, there are some phrases, and I'm sure now you can read them in Slovak, and you don't need next apache anymore. Did you hear that? Next apache, which is nech sa páči. Nech sa páči. and it means here you are, here you go. So this is how we write it and pronounce it. And another good one is nice driveway. Did you hear that one? Nice driveway for cheers in Slovak or bless you, which is na zdravie. This is how we write it, how we say it. It's na zdravie, but people say sometimes nice driveway just to remember that, right? Or they tell me, my grandma used to say nice driveway. And I said, well, that's a good one. And next, Apache, it's a good one too. There was even a restaurant in Bratislava called Next Apache. But it's correctly here, Nech Apache and na zdravie. Good. So, there was also, in my promise, I said I'll also be talking about how the language changes in 30 years or over the time. And the phonetics, our phonological system of the language, what do you think? How fast does it change?
Fast. Fast.
Yeah, so that's the most stable one, right? Because it's the basic of the language, the sound system. So it takes many years until it changes. So for example, we have here letter Y in Slovak, and it has special attention in our book because we just don't pronounce it anymore. There's no difference between Y and I in Slovak, it's still just E. And you might be surprised, and Slovaks would be surprised when I say it disappeared in 12th century, like a lot of time ago. Why we still have it there, right? So I would be the first one to vote to, not to use Y anymore in Slovak language, but it's still there, and it takes the whole third grade, the kids to learn when to write it and when not, So this is the challenge of Slovak phonetics, because kids really never hear that, and they just have to learn in this word you say, you write it and in this not. But they don't hear it anymore. There is not, it's many years, it has not been there anymore. And did you hear name Ludovic Stur? The politician and also linguist and professor from the 19th century. He was the one who put together some rules for Slovak orthography and grammar. It's also called standardization, right, or codification of Slovak language. And he said, we don't need this Y. He never had this Y there. Back in 19th century, he said, we don't pronounce it, there is no need for it. And look at the Slovak language now. It's back, and it's because later they reintroduced it. They just said Slovak is too small to survive. It has to follow the rules of Polish, Russian, and Czech orthography. But in Russian and Polish, they still pronounce it. It's still right? There's different sound. It's E and But Czechs don't pronounce it as well as the Slovak. But there is the whole tradition back to Kralická Biblia, the first Bible translated in Czech language, and a lot of orthography and tradition. So it was there and it stayed in Czech language. So this is something what we also have, even though we don't pronounce it. So what I'm trying to show you here is that the sound system of the language changes very slowly. There is another grapheme, this A with two dots, called široké A in Slovak, and the pronunciation used to be A, like päť, meso, deväť, babetko. We don't pronounce it anymore like this, it's just regular A, päť, meso, etc. So even this kids need to learn, but this at least doesn't happen as often. It's only after these four bilabial consonants, P, M, B, and B. So you can hear sometimes A be pronounced in certain regions, Orava or Gemer, or some, linguists still use that, but it's not common anymore. What is changing is the pronunciation of the soft L. That's not anymore, it's like here, we put it like this, it's is kind of optional for the teacher to say it or not, because that's also changing. We don't pronounce it as soft as we used to, like lieto, lipa, lizat, liat. It's not, this is something that is changing, but it's taking time. Like in 30 years, it's, it's a process that takes more time than 30 years. Yeah, so this was the sound system in Slovak language. Now we'll go to morphology. And for morphology, if you study there, you need to, our first category that's introduced is the grammatical gender. Not just the gender is masculine and feminine, obviously for people or animals, but also for objects. Right, so any noun in Slovak has to have a grammatical gender, and it's decided based on the ending. Like if it's no ending in the meaning no vowel at the end, like plán, dom, film, počítač, it's masculine. Most of the time when there is a ending, it's feminine. Kniha, káva, banka, or o ending, it's neutral gender. And for this, it's something very challenging even for Slovak kids to learn when they're studying the grammar, because as you can see below, there are like so-called model words. They will show you the declension, how to change the endings, what to do with the noun in a sentence. And there are established like 12 words for like model words for noun declension, like chlap, hrdina, dub, stroj. And for masculine gender, right, there are 4. In Czech language there are actually 6, and then it's like a lot of, to study, and we are not happy about this when we were preparing our textbook. I will sit for a moment. So, what is interesting about this, let me start first with, we still use officially these words, chlap, hrdina, dub, stroj, and in Czech it's předseda and soudce, and there are still words that were adjusted during the communist era, because for Stur or other linguists, they obviously have words, like model words as král, which means king, right? So let's follow how, we decline king, then it's the model for other. Or they had sluha, peasant, or they had meč, sword, or they had dvor, like backyard, or the model word was church, or chicken, yeah, words like that. And then in communist era, they changed. They said, we are not peasants anymore, so let's use hero. So we had their hrdina, or chlap, it's a, good guy, not just a man, strong, good guy. Or stroj, a machine. Or předseda, which was that time, in the 50s, it would be the president, the leader of cooperatives in communism. So those words are still there, and we said, but if we are teaching foreigners, we need something, really a word they will use every day, something frequent and kind of modern. So we changed those words, and then we used words like muž, kolega, plán, and počítač. The words from what do you use frequently when you're speaking in Slovak, like a man, colleague, computer, and plan. But what was, what is challenging when you learn the Slovak language is actually this declension, noun declension, because there are several cases, and each case has different endings based on the gender and the type of declension the noun belongs to. So this is probably the most challenging part. But again, if we compare West Slavic languages, it's still super easy. If you look at the Czech declension there, instead of 4, they have 6 modals, which means 2 times 12, 24 more endings or different rules for how to use that. So when we were trying to introduce I have to finish soon, I will probably speed it up. What we did, we, with A1 textbook, we introduced 800 nouns. So when you study at that level, you'll learn 800 nouns. So I took them all and I looked like, what are the most frequent ones for the masculine gender and masculine nouns, and for feminine, and then for neutral. And then you realize certain models you don't need to teach your students that or that noun because they're just 2 or they will never use them. So that's why we changed that and we introduced pretty still challenging, but from our perspective, pretty simple table, like having like 6 basic modals students need to learn or study or focus on when learning the Slovaks, especially in the novice and intermediate level, and then slowly we introduce other endings. But this is the basic you really need when you study the language. I have here also some slides comparing Slovak and Czech, just to proving that, for example, in this case, when we are trying to see what's the most difficult West Slavic language, talking about morphology, then if you compare Slovak and Czech, you will see that in Czech it's even more challenging. There are just more endings. For past tense, more forms of participes and auxiliary verbs. We didn't have to go over this because I'm running out of time, but very last comment or thought is when we teach this grammar, like basic phrase, like where do you come from? I come from Slovakia, I come from Czech Republic, from USA. We learned I am som zo Slovenska, right, or z Česka. But when we say I live in Slovakia or I travel to Slovakia, then there is interesting situation, because if you look here, when we are talking about the countries like Germany, Italy, or any country, then you pretty follow this model, right? Cestujem do Nemecka, do Talianska, do Norska, and then I live there. I live in Germany, I live in Italy, Norway, and Czech Republic. So v Nemecku, v Taliansku, v Česku. And then I have to introduce, but when you say, and you're talking about Slovakia, you say, cestujem na Slovensko a bývam na Slovensku. And the same for Ukraine. And cestujem na Ukrajinu a bývam na Ukrajine. And then students are asking, like, why is this? Why is the Slovak, like, not follows this model? And then I was like, well, that's what doesn't change so fast in morphology, because Slovakia didn't used to be an independent country, right? It was the part of Czechoslovakia. So you would say idem do Československa, but within the country na Slovensko. So na preposition is actually a preposition when you go to a region or you go to an island. And we still have it there. That's something we should change, even though it doesn't come naturally. Sometimes I would at least try to encourage people to use it differently, to show that it's Slovakia and Ukraine are 2 independent countries, and to use the preposition do. So cestujem do Slovenska, cestujem do Ukrajiny, and then som v Slovensku, som v Ukrajine. Because then we are talking about our own country in our own language, and we doesn't recognize it with a simple morphological structure, because the language changed slowly. But this is something I truly believe we should at least think about and understand that how language changes. And I will probably stop here. There are more slides about the dialects. If you have questions during the discussion, maybe we can go over the dialects. I even had here a picture from the Eastern or something. I wanted to talk about the culture, but I think I can stop here and give the space for questions. Thank you.
Yes.
Do you want to use the microphone?
I could go to the dialects.
Can you go back to talk about the dialects, please?
And your question, maybe I'll
It
listen
may,
to more
it may be
questions.
answered right now, so.
Yeah?
Okay, pleased to see you.
All right, so for the dialects, basically, first of all, I wanted to make sure we all know there are dialects. And there are many, many dialects in Slovakia. So even within a country half of the size of Pennsylvania, there are dialects, and generally we divide them into western part, central and eastern part dialects. We have also Rusin dialects or Rusin language speakers with the brown color there, or the areas when people use or speak Hungarian, which is the on the southern border, kind of gray and yellow. And then there are also Goro dialects, the green color. It's the region of Spiš, Orava, and Kisuce. So why it's like split this way? It's very interesting because West Slovakian dialects and East Slovakian dialects are closer, have more common traits than the central, and the linguists believe that there was different migration, that just different tribes arrived at this territory. So the West Slavic tribes arrived from the north, and they split into western and eastern part, and then southern migration, because the language and the standard and codified official language is based on a central dialect, and then the migration came from the south, and that's why those dialects are just closer to South Slavic languages. And then I guess I wanted to ask you, like, if you have Slovak ancestors, where did they come from? Because most of the time what I hear was Eastern Slovakia, the territory of Carpato-Rusins and Eastern Slovakia. And often if I have student who is like second generation or third, they would even speak that Sharish or Zemplín dialect, and then it's very interesting when I try to teach the standard Slovak, but I encourage also them to express in that dialect, because I used to teach dialect one semester or two 20 years ago at the Comenius University, but it's really fascinating. We have many recordings. Even there we are losing many dialects, but you can still find out more about that. There's the atlas like this. If you want to learn how a certain word is pronounced in different regions, you can find a wonderful map that will tell you almost each village how they would pronounce the word, or how it's different. But the thing was to show you how many dialects are there. And some of them are still pretty strong because there are many people speaking, or you can still hear the accent in people speaking standard Slovak in East Slovakia, because just the accent is different. It's not on the first syllable, but it's on so-called penultima, like second from the end. So they just speak differently because the accent moves within a word. Yes?
Historically speaking, how did Slovakia end up in that little island of Indo-European languages when you had all of the green part, the Slavic languages? I mean, it seems like it should have been Slavic, more Slavic.
So the whole thing is Slavic, right? The green.
Right.
Let me go there quickly. Here. I mean, you probably were referring to this, right? This is the Slav. The green means Slavic languages.
Yes.
And they had the same form before, even, till 6th century after Christ. So it was till the split of those tribes. It was so-called Proto-Slavic language, and it's the whole, the whole area, the green area, is the same Proto-Slavic language.
Including
Yeah.
Okay.
So, let me put it this way. The Proto-Slavic language, we don't have documents, right? It was till 6th century when the tribes just split. There was the so-called big migration, affected the whole Europe. And they then settled in the western, southern, and eastern territory of nowadays Slavic territories. And then they had their kind of dialects, West Slavic, Southern, and Eastern Slavic dialects and micro dialects. And when Cyril and Methodius came to Grande Moravia, it wasn't identical language. It's altered Slavonic. It was similar to language the people were speaking in Grande Moravia, but it wasn't the same. It was still with many Southern Slavic words they introduced, but it wasn't the same. And then from the 10th century, we speak about individual languages, because in 10th century, 3 important changes, language changes happened, and they have different results in each language. Like in Slovak, we have, it's called contraction, for example. It's tvoja, but in Czech it's tva, ma, right? Or then there was, it's called zánika vocalizácia, there were like vowels like yeri, and they disappeared and then influenced the whole declension, and each language has different result. Or the nasal vowels like menso, right? So how they change in Slovakia was mostly meso or maso, in Czech it's maso, mięso in Polish. So they're just, the 10th century is the moment when we speak about the individual languages, because some changes happened in the sound system and in morphology, and they look just differently.
Wait, one question.
Yeah.
Did Moravia, what happened to Moravia? Were they really under the Slovak area, or were they more in the Czech area?
So that's a very good question. We, the Grande Moravia is a territory, and then there's also the historians saying it was here, but it's pretty clear, and we are pretty sure it was in the Moravia, nowadays region of Czech Republic, Moravian part. That's why they always say, right, we are Moravians, we are not Czechs. So they say, they claim their heritage from Grande Moravia. So that part, and the western part of Slovakia, around Nitra and Bratislava. And there was even the, do you say Dukinate of Nitra, Duke of Nitra, and those two, like pre-kingdoms, I would say, joined Moimir, the first Duke, to unify that region and create Grande Moravia. At the beginning of 9th century, then Cyril and Methodius came, 863. And after that, at the 900, Hungarian tribes arrived to Europe from Asia, and they were nomadic tribes. Slavic tribes were settled in, they were farmers. They were not used to fight, they didn't know really how to fight. So when Hungarians and nomadic tribes arrived, they won several battles and took the territory. And that's why also Cyril and Methodius had to flew away. I mean, not Cyril was dead, and then Methodius and his disciples had to leave, and the territory was part of the Hungary. Territory of Czech, nowadays Czechia, was had their own kingdom of Bohemia for several centuries, and eventually became a part of Habsburg Empire, Austria. Poland also managed to have an independent kingdom, and later Poland was divided for 200 years between Russia, Germany, Kingdom of Germany called Prussia, I don't know how you pronounce it, Prusko, and then Austro-Hungary. So that's how territory of Slovakia became part of the Hungarian kingdom, but it's still also our history. You know, we still should study that, and Slovaks achieved a lot. They were part of that kingdom. And another comment there, what I encourage maybe to use in English language is to distinguish between Hungary and Hungary. When we are talking about a Hungary before 1918, in Slovak and Slavic language we have the name Uhorsko, because we all the Slavs and other ethnic groups were part of the Hungary, and it was different state, right, different country, so it should be Uhorsko. And then after 1918, it's called Maďarsko, Magyar country, Magyar state. So I think that would be helpful to distinguish, because Uhorsko is part of our history and Maďarsko is the independent country since 1918.
I have two questions, if you don't mind. The first has to do with a graduate degree program named Dennis Reagan. Do you know him? And he's put a textbook together too. How does yours compare with his textbook?
If I what?
How does your textbook compare with his textbook?
That's a good question. First of all, his textbook is not published, right? I wish it would be published, because I think it's a very good textbook. It's the textbook which is specifically prepared for Americans or English-speaking learners, and it's colorful and engaging, but why? Because when the Minister of Education asked us to prepare a textbook, they said it should be for everyone. And we're like, well, for everyone, like, how can we do that? And then we decided, okay, has to be colorful and self-explanatory, helping the teacher to provide explanation in any language, and it's not in English. So sometimes students struggle. It's not for self-study. You need a teacher when you use Križom Krážom, and the teacher needs to know the language well, because we expect the teacher knows what he's talking about. We prepared the teacher's manual, so he can go and check what are the expectations, what he should be explaining. But Dennis's book, it's, I would say, more precise because you have more information in English. It's targeting English-speaking students, but it's less communicative, I would say.
Thank you. The second one, it's about the university's relationship in trying to preserve cultural heritage in the Pittsburgh area. Do you have any ties to the two Catholic or Slovak archbishops up there, Zubik and Kulik, and the United States Steel Corporation?
I met them. They are invited to our Slovak Heritage Festival, but we don't have really any, projects together or plan. I know they are there. As I said, we met. We know about each other, but so far I more professionally meet with the presidents of the 5 or even now 6 or 7 fraternal organizations, which is the Jednota. Then there's First Ladies Catholic Slovak Union, Slovak Catholic Sokol USA, and then there's Ladies Pennsylvania, Slovak Catholic Union. So those fraternal organizations, because they support our program, and they put together a huge endowment, and the university uses this endowment to pay the expenses of our Slovak Studies program. So technically, I'm not paid by the University of Pittsburgh and the program, but from the endowment, which is necessary to continue for the continuation of this program.
First, thank you for a very engaging lecture today. My question concerns the genitive case. Hopefully you've gotten a question before today's meeting, but for the benefit of everyone here, as a student of Slovak language, when we're looking at nouns, of the numbers, say 2 through 4 of any noun, strom, stromy, and then we get to number 5 when we're counting, and it changes, and it's not just Slovak, it's, as far as I know, it's every Slavic language, Russian, Bulgarian, Czech, Polish, Ukrainian. Why? First, I hope the question is clear to everyone, for those who study it. So my question is, please don't say Lentak.
Yeah.
Just,
No, I actually always like myself to find the answer. And I studied and I taught the historical grammar. I hope you understand my explanation because I didn't really study English and I struggled to translate everything and share it as easy as I can. But I'm better in Slovak, trust me. And so I always try to find answer for myself. And I go to historical grammar, comparative linguistics, knowing Polish, Czech helps, but Sorbian, I'm glad I have a moment to talk about Sorbian languages because those languages still have a dual. And that's a part of the answer your question. So it's not only singular and plural, there's even dual. So anytime, as a number, as a grammatical category, anytime you have two things, you put specific endings for your noun, for your verb, for your adjective. It's really, and that's what in Proto-Slavic was. So there was a dual. So that's why we have for number 1 and 2 several forms. We have jeden, jedna, jedno, and then we have dva, dve, right? Because those were pronouns. Where it wasn't the numbers, it was pronouns. And even until now, you know that in Slovak we don't have the articles, the and a. We don't have them, but jeden can, in a sentence, be also the article like a, like amen, one man there, right? It's jeden muž. It doesn't mean I'm talking about a number, I'm talking about someone I don't know, right? So jeden and dva in the Proto-Slavic were pronouns. That's why they have form jeden, jedna, jedno, like ten, táto, ktorý, ktorá, ktoré, and then dva, dve, because it was dual. So dual existed in Proto-Slavic. So 1 and 2 were originally pronouns. That's why they have specific endings. Then 3 and 4 had the same structure as the adjective. So they have similar endings, right? Like tretiemu, čtvrtému, piatému. You just 3 and 4. Let me keep it short. Were adjectives and had the forms like adjectives, and 5 and more. That form was like a substantive form. So that's why when you put a noun in a sentence, like, I don't know in English, Statue of Liberty, or 5 of men, right? Or the structure when you use genitive, it's because you have two nouns together. So, veľa mužov, 5 mužov, it's like kopa mužov, skupina mužov, it's basically this like group of men, and you use the same structure for 5 and more, because those were considered nouns, they had the noun forms.
Pardon me, you've explained that there is a difference.
Yeah.
But, and I don't mean to be argumentative,
No.
but I haven't heard why there's the difference. What's the difference? Why between the numbers 4 and 5? What causes my wife, Jana, to be Pet Janiek, 5 Janas?
That's not a good example, because there's no only Jana for you. Maybe chairs is better,
Stolicek.
Right.
Stolicek.
Right.
Let's throw them over.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying
Why?
okay. For Proto-Slavic, the declension system was very different what we have now. Now, the criterion is gender, masculine, feminine, neutral. In Proto-Slavic, it wasn't important the gender of the noun. There was so-called kmen. I don't even know how to translate. It was okmen, ikmen, akmen, and based on that, there was this certain declension, like žena and sluha or kolega were the same. That's why we still have, the models of žena and kolega, because it was the same category in Proto-Slavic. And the same thing happened. People didn't know probably how to count, right? Or they count a certain amount. And why it's different, I'm assuming it's because like it sounds almost like 5 of a certain amount. So that's why there's probably the genitive. If you have a lot of stuff and you just want 5 of that. Because once you can 1, 2, 3, 4, there's just certain pieces. But maybe with 5 and more, it was just like the whole group, and I'm saying like the skupina mužov, that was just the grammar that was there. And it's I understand it doesn't make sense, or it's hard to explain it just because it's 2,000 years ago, and the Proto-Slavic language doesn't exist, but the structures are still here. We respect those structures, they are so frequent, so it's hard to explain it now, but it reflects the system we had before, you know? Yeah. It's not Lentak, I see, maybe it's me, I can't explain it sufficiently, but it makes sense. It just, like dievča, right? There would be like, why we have dievča, it's considered girl neutral gender. Because it just doesn't reflect the biological, the nature, natural gender. It's the grammatical gender, and the dievča was so-called ente kmenje. It was just the specific group of nouns that had that particular declension, so it still reflects as a neutral gender, even though it's a girl, it's a female gender, right? So just though that system was so different to what we have now, it's hard to explain, but it worked, and since it's very frequent, that's what I want to say, like, often irregular things or constructions are still here because they are very frequent. We use them every day, and they don't change, even over 2,000 years. The grammar, the whole system doesn't make sense, but it's so frequent and used that you keep it. You forgot why, but you keep it, right? Yeah. I had a question.
So, question here, right?
Yeah. Okay.
If it's any consolation, the same difference between 4 and 5 exists in other Slavic languages. It's also present in Polish and in Russian and in others as well. But one comment about the last point you made before the Q&A part, as far as the use of the prepositional in different countries. Since you're a speaker of Polish, you know it's exactly the same thing in Polish and a few other Slavic languages as well. You don't say in Polish
Słowację, tylko na Słowację.
Na Słowację, na Węgry, na Litwę, and so forth. So it's not just Slovakia that is subjected to that difference, but other surrounding countries as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also, I think it was a student in a summer, they said in Poland now, it's a big discussion about that because of Ukraine. So they are discussing this, like why to say jadę na Ukrainę, it should be do Ukrainy. And,
but do Ukrainy is considered incorrect.
That's what they are saying now, like it's like recent thing, they're saying, let's change it to show that Ukraine is an independent country in Slovakia. So it was considered, but you know what I'm saying, like the linguists or the maybe journalists are trying to point out, this is the country and we would like to use the prepositions for that.
As a general observation, something that becomes, that is an error historically, but becomes so persuasive that a lot of people start making that error, it eventually finds its way into the practice. And there are numerous examples of that in Slovak and in Polish and other languages.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mm-hmm. Even now, when we use conditional, it's like error and becoming more and more popular. People don't say anymore "keby som mal čas," "išiel by som," or even "keby som bol mal čas." They just say "keby mám čas." "Keby mám čas," prídem, and it hurts my ears, but it looks like more and more people, especially young people, use that, and they don't even realize it's incorrect. So maybe in a couple of years we'll see that will be the correct version of Slovak.
Got two questions. One is, in your Slovak Studies program, how many students do you have in there annually?
Yeah, so cultural classes, of course, they're more popular. There are around 30, 40 students. In language classes, it's smaller. I have 7 now in the elementary Slovak. And then I have 5 in intermediate. And it's recently intermediate advanced, because there was only 1 advanced student. But that's also because Professor Potruba passed away a couple years ago. Then there was another professor, Michalkova, teaching. Then she left, and because of the situation and the pandemic and the challenges as a Slavic department we have to face affected the numbers. But I hope the 7 and 10 might hopefully be a standard for future years for language studies.
Would you comment on this? Most of us, our parents came while Hungarian was being taught in the schools. And the only Slovak language lessons they were receiving were from their parents. So it's very basic Slovak without any of the gender or structure that you've been discussing. And I think there is a unique Slovak language in America. Have you studied anything along those lines?
Well, there was a research, I believe in the 90s, when Professor Rybka came to US and he wrote a book, actually, Slovak of the American Slovaks. And there are the words or constructions or sentences people used to say here. And now I would like to go back to similar research. And what I like are especially the words related to the food and traditions that what keeps for the longest time. And the Pittsburgh area halušky. I don't know where everywhere is the halušky. And anytime we post on social media, the Slovaks are making comments, those are not halušky. And that's always me like, oh, they are. They're Pittsburgh or American halušky, and just accept that. And that's something we need to explain, right? The food varies. Even in Slovakia, lokša means something different in Žilina than in southern Slovakia, or Bobalki, it's something different. So this is what as American halušky means, or kolači, or other words, or pierogi or pirohi, right? Polish helps, kielbasa. So those words are still, used, and then probably stay the longest because you have the traditions, you celebrate them with your family, you prepare specific food. So that's what we still have around. Yeah.
Rich, to answer you, I grew up learning Slovak from my parents. It was a dialect. Gender was there, grammar was there, all the endings were there. We just didn't know it. It was just conversation between two people, me and my mom, me and my dad. And that was never brought up because they weren't educated. My father never made it past 3rd grade. He knew how to do it, he just didn't know what he was passing along or how to talk about what he was saying. So, but it was all there. You just didn't know about it.
When we had relatives visiting from Slovakia over the years, the last 50 years or so, my mother would say to me, Larry, we speak a gypsy Slovak. And that is Slovak. But we don't know how to talk that way. It's almost like a university. But when I talked to my cousins, they said to me, we spoke in English, I didn't learn Slovak. Back then, our parents said, we don't want you to be Slovaks, we want you to be American first. And there's so much hatred against Slovaks and Polish and fighting for jobs and all that stuff, okay? So anyways, my other relatives said, Larry, we don't speak good Slovak. You'd have to go to university to speak good Slovak. So interesting how each different party thought themselves differently in the Slovak. But I always remember my mother saying, we speak a gypsy Slovak.
Yeah, I agree with that. And when, people came to mostly Pennsylvania and Ohio from Eastern Slovakia, they spoke Eastern dialects. Even the first Amerikansko-Slovacké noviny, right? The first newspaper was published in Eastern Slovak dialect, and then later, I think it was Rovňanek changed it to Standard Slovak, and the press in United States kind of had to educate people about the Standard Slovak and actually about the whole idea of being Slovak, like from Slovakia, not from Northern Hungary, not from Felvitek, or not from Zemplínska župa, or Šarišská župa, or Spiš, right? Not like regional part, because those people would say, I'm from Zemplín, I'm from Šariš, I'm from... that's what they knew from the Hungarian administrative, how the country was split, And the idea of Czechoslovakia and Slovakia as an independent country, Czechoslovakia, had to be, through newspaper, kind of introduced. That's why the Masaryk and his visits in United States, it was really important. He spoke good English, so it was clear, and he was actually the person who managed to create Czechoslovakia. Yeah.
Okay, so one last question.
Then two, because the lady over there is waiting.
It's fine. Hello, so my name is Valentina Lukin. I'm Slovak, Russian, and Czech instructor at the Department of State. And thank you so much for such a lovely presentation and very interesting comparison between Czech and Slovak, especially. I really appreciated that. So my question is about Krížom krážom. This is a textbook that we really love to use for our students, but unfortunately it is sometimes challenging to get it. So one thing that I wanted to ask you, how you can get it in US but not pay $500 just for shipping. And the other question that I have for you is, are you planning to make any readers, like basic readers for students that will go along with Krížom krážom in the future?
Could you repeat that word? If I plan for students, what?
It's a basic reader when you have like a small reading, materials that can be supplemented. Yes, exactly. So that's something we are really looking forward to, something like that, if it will be introduced. Or if your textbook can be online, that will be also great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I know that Krížom krážom is used all over the world, and we are happy about that. That's why I think also the teacher's manual is very important, because there are the explanation for the teacher. It can be challenging. The e-Slovak is helpful. That's the version we have online. Unfortunately, we don't have it as an e-book, and it's the kind of issue with communities university, because there are just not, e-books. It's just not a common thing, and the publishers, communities university, and the financial part comes from the Minister of Education. So it's kind of something I don't really have rights. I wrote the textbook, and then they are managing everything. So I can just encourage them to think about that, but it takes some time. And regarding shipping, we are also struggling with that. Pitt store, university, bookstore orders them, so sometimes they are available there. I bring them always for my students in my suitcase. It's really not a good distribution. Some people make business with that, and then they bring them and sell for $70 or $100. But I think the better way is if you reach out to me or directly to Studia Akademika Slováka, they can send it to you, and the price, if you buy it there, it's around $15, and in bookstore in Slovakia it's immediately 30 or 35, so it's double. If you wanna save money, go directly to SAS, and then they can ship it sometimes directly to your home address. And I know it costed like $15, the shipping, so you can total to $30 or $40. I think that's affordable. Then you need to contact Studia Akademika Slováka, or you can contact me, and we can help with that. But yeah, just individual shipping, it's 15. So if you want like at 100, then it's That's a lot of money. But maybe even embassy can help us sometimes, or find other ways how to ship the textbook here. And yeah, so far there's an online version. There are around some pirate versions, but unfortunately we don't have an ebook yet. Yeah. And regarding the reading, I have been the leading author for 15 years, but since I accepted the job at Pittsburgh University, I am not anymore as involved. So if Studia Academica plans, I can ask them if they plan some reading supplements. I don't believe right now they are working or continuing, but we need to update the textbooks, add different exercise books, teacher manuals. There's so much work, but now I'm not as involved as I used to be.
Okay, so we're the last two questions because we need to wrap up.
I'm also a beginning Slovak student when we use your textbook, and I was curious about the letters that English we call, Q and W, and our instructor said that they are really only used in foreign words, and so I was wondering about when and how they were integrated into the Slovak language, and then also what that says about the fluidity and flexibility about Slovak over time.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. We actually had a discussion if to keep them in our alphabet or not. I didn't want to keep the Q and X and Y, X and Q in Slovak alphabet because, as you said, they're only in the words. They are not Slovak words, and Q is actually in only one, like aqua park. But any other Q, typically in Slavic languages, there are letters K and V. Kv arteto, kv pomožte mi, kv adrant, kv. There is always key V for, I guess, for Latin or for Greek words. And for X, we have only xylophone, and I don't believe there is an taxic, right? So because of those 3-4 words, we keep those letters in the alphabet. But I know that in other, I'm not sure if it's Polish or other languages, they even for X, they would write KS, right? Some languages just more, we keep for those X in Slovak. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't know, I think this was the last question. Okay, Helen, so really the last one.
Very last one. I listen to a daily podcast in the Slovak language. It's a news program. It's not language instruction in any way. It's very interesting to hear what modern day Slovak just being spoken by educated people who are totally fluent in it. The huge number of English word borrowings is sometimes funny, sometimes a little annoying. I think, there's a perfectly good Slovak word, why are you not using it? I was wondering, what are the categories in which these words are being borrowed? I know sometimes it's simply a cool factor, and sometimes I notice they like the expression to nie je férové. It's not fair, as in it's not fair to accuse someone of a crime without evidence. Is that a word, a phrase that Slovaks simply, under the communists maybe, did not use about something being fair? And what other categories of words are being borrowed into Slovak?
I think the main categories are two. The words, they are coming to Slovak and we don't have equivalent for those yet, right? Like Skypeovať, Zoomovať, what else we have? Googlit, right? So they're just the words, they're related to modern world and then inventions coming and new technologies. So in that case, I think it's just practical to use the original English or Latin name and adjust them, as you say, férové, right? Or typically those verbs would get ending ovat, right? Fak, sovat, zumo. I will get back to that phrase, but generally speaking, it's like ovat, it's the group, and that's the biggest verbal group. The verbs with suffix ova, right? Ovat. As I said, zumovat, telefonovat, even tancovat, it's from German. This is, on the other hand, it's not new, because it happened even before. When I wanted to prepare a slide for you to show you the words we use for clothing in Slovak. People used to have a kroj, right? But once they switched the kabát, Turkish, klobuk, Turkish, shal, I don't know, from Pershtina, Persian language. So many clothing, when it was especially new material or new type or something modern, got the Slovak language from Arabic or French. So that's something what always has been there. We have many German words, Hungarian words in Slovak language, we just don't know about it anymore. So this is something what happens, and this is the most the field of language, or the branch of the language that when I'm talking about vocabulary and lexicon, that's something that changes the most. And then the other factor is when something is perfectly fine, and we have an equivalent for it, and it's just the cool factor. Sometimes it's many times it's the work life. If people work in international companies, the word like team, it's preferred than skupina, pracovná skupina, right? Or budget, rozpočet, or what do we have there? Cash and hotovosť. So some words, especially if people work in international groups or with international partners, they just use this kind of vocabulary. And the cool factor, it's mostly with the young people. It's the vendors, the coffee shops, or any cool place would use English or English terms from English. That's also what happens. So there is probably more. We should watch how we use the language, and but on the other hand, certain culture of when you speak should be required from the politicians, from the people working at the universities, the speakers, moderators, actors, those who are the example. And I believe even now with social media and with even disinformation, like anyone can say anything and it just becomes maybe popular or spread. I think the person should cultivate their language and think about what we say and how we say it. Not be puristy, right? Like speak just the way, be open, flexible, but still respect certain standards of the language. And then communism, just to finish the question, like during the communism, of course, we didn't have certain terms. We didn't have Pepsi, as my students, or Coca-Cola, as my students say. This is Kofola. It's the best drink and it's the communist version of Coca-Cola. So I hope I answered that.
Thank you. Thank you, Renáta. Extremely thank you for this interesting and enlightening lecture. I never met anyone who would put and present Slovak language in such a vibrant and playful way. And thank you all of you for attending today's event. And thank you, Slovak American Society of Washington.
And I would like to take a picture with you all. If you don't mind just to stand up, I will stay here with Stanka and Helen, and we can maybe take a picture from here. It'd be wonderful. Thank you.